So now we have our second talk, which is by Julian Carter at National Museum Wales on their project involving youth activism, No More Plastic.
Hi, my name is Jules Carter. I'm the Principal Conservator of the Natural Sciences here at Amgueddfa Cymru National Museum Wales. Today's talk is going to be on a project called No More Plastic. This was a youth-led intervention project run together with my colleague Sarah Unan back in 2018. The project focused looking at the challenges of plastic pollution in the marine environment and how we could utilise the marine-themed galleries and displays at the museum to highlight this issue. It's worth noting here that in the title, No More Plastic, the word more means sea in Welsh, and so the title has a take that works both ways in the English and Welsh languages. This project was also used as a pilot project for a much bigger scheme that we developed called Hands-on Heritage, a series of community-led projects and interventions designed to bring the work of the museum and community together into a much more socio-democratic way of working. Projects like this one provided us with a way of reassessing the ways we work, as they need to be faster paced, more reactionary, providing us with a good opportunity to reassess our museum practices in order to facilitate such participation. Conservators and curators can play an important role in such activities through our knowledge of the collections and spaces we work with. Facilitating such projects and interventions can be significantly broaden the remit and impact our galleries and collections can make to society as a whole. At Amgueddfa Cymru, we're no strangers to trying to use the collections creatively and use them in unexpected ways and places. This has ranged from tents at the local Royal Horticultural Show to activities within the museum themselves, such as for the Museum of the Unexpected, where we put collections in areas and galleries where people didn't normally expect them. And we've also had great inspiration working with art collectives. A good example is a local one called Medium Row, with whom we took over somebody's house one weekend and filled it completely with natural history specimens. The project is taking this sort of work to a new level by furthering its impact and directly involving communities such as our Youth Forum in its creation. The idea of this project was born out of the Blue Planet effect that followed the impact of plastic pollution from that series. I had been looking at our big open diorama displays and pondering how we could use these in spaces in a way that built upon its impact, using our experience with previous activities such as those mentioned previously. A conversation with my colleague in learning, Sarah Unan, raised the possibility that this could be a good pilot idea for our Youth Forum, and she wondered if they would like to take it on board. This was duly put to the group and they got super excited by it, and hence we embarked on this as a museum activism project. Our young activists really wanted to keep with the museum concept to try and show authentic objects and specimens, and so they were really keen to use actual beach collected plastic waste to really highlight its impact it was having on the environment. To support this, they reached out to some other community groups, particularly Surfers Against Sewage, who worked closely with the Youth Forum to help organise plastic waste collection from beach cleanups and share their hands-on experience of dealing with the problems of plastic pollution. So once we settled on the idea to use beach collected rubbish, the conservation process needed to come into place, as we couldn't just bring these materials into the museum and chuck it all over onto the displays. So we started with considering the health and safety issues around handling such material, the need to prepare it for use in the museum, such as how it's stored initially, and then decontaminated through freezing to kill insect pests. It was then cleaned, sorted, to remove all the hazardous waste, especially unpleasant items like used needles and condoms, definitely not something we wanted to put over our displays. And then the next part of the challenge was devising ways of installing this material into the exhibition displays that would create the impact our young activists were after. This gave the team involved in the project a really good insight into why museums have to handle collections of materials in the way that we do, preventing insect pests getting into the collection and ensuring no toxic or hazardous materials will affect the collections, displays or even people. This had quite a major impact on young activists around the amount of waste and the different types of material in it, such as the excess of small plastic toys or things like light sticks. It now became quite clear that the scale of this project was going to be pretty big due to the amount of plastic rubbish and the size of the gallery displays that they were potentially going to be working with. The team quickly realised they needed to involve others, and this provided a great opportunity to reach out to other young people in the wider community. And it was really interesting to see the impact this was already having on the youngsters involved in this project, collecting and working with this material, and particularly realisation it was actually going to be used in the museum. Wow. The project was very much a collaborative effort, and roles were shared depending on the abilities and talents of our young activists. Gallery visits were particularly important, and this was when our youngsters got together and discussed what they were going to do and how they're going to do it, discussing the potential problems and the health and safety implications that come with them. They even got to learn about risk assessments. Exciting. This was important because it helped to form a vision of how they were going to do the intervention and how that message would get across safely to our visitors. So plans were drawn up about how the gallery was going to be used, and the ways all the creative sea creatures and various interventions were going to be pulled together. In addition, they came up with their own text and videos to be incorporated into the space during the intervention. And here's a lovely example about reimagining the flip-flop as some sort of imaginary marine creature with its life history and impacts. And it was great to see how the skills and talents of the team came out in many different ways, such as with this lovely illustration that was put together, envisaging how the various activities in the gallery of spaces would all become linked together. So the rubbish was cleaned, many wonderful sea creatures created, and the design was put together, and it came to setting up. The young activists were very much involved in this process, arranging the various creations, bringing themed displays around the dioramas together, and scattering rubbish here, there, and everywhere. The install also gave them an understanding of the technical side of the way we put exhibitions together, along with the health and safety issues that we do have to consider to ensure what we're creating is both impactful but a safe environment for all. The one thing that really surprised the young activists about this whole project was the freedom they were given with the galleries. This unprecedented access and ability to intervene and alter the displays really surprised them, and it had a really positive impact. They were really taken by what they were able to achieve. Some of the quotes here reflect that, the joy of working together, being able to throw rubbish around the galleries and to create displays in the way they were able to. Materials were also prepared to introduce what they were doing and why they were doing it, so it could be shared on social media, on the museum's website, and used as an introduction to the space when the intervention was running. This included an explanation of what they'd done here with the real plastic, and that it had been treated, cleaned and made safe, and that the project had been running in close liaison with people like myself and other colleagues to support them. So then at the end of July 2018 and at the start of the summer holiday period, when the museum was really busy, we opened the activism. There was no prior advertising, and most of our staff were completely unaware of what we were up to, including the museum assistants. 1 week later, we then completely removed the whole installation as if it had never been there. So here are a few images from the installation itself. It started in our front downstairs natural history gallery. Here, when you walk through the door, you see a big open diorama of a sea cliff and seashore. Hanging above this is a basking shark, and this had one of the main interventions on it, which consists of a net with this rubbish hanging from it, and as if the basking shark was about to swim into it. Underneath this is the seashore with various birds and animals from this sort of environment. Plastic litter was scattered all around. I mean, we included repurposing some damaged old taxidermy into birds such as this little gull caught in plastic and looking very sorry for themselves. Various displays around the gallery were also incorporated into the intervention with various creative additions, which ranged from just bits of plastic to things made from it, such as these fish and other creative additions. One of my favourites is this giant octopus that was stuck into the case of the giant clam, and this subsequently got used in many different ways afterwards, such as at the Pride marches. Our leatherback turtle specimen didn't escape the intervention either. This is officially the world's largest specimen, and itself was caught up in fishing line and drowned in the 1980s, and hence this intervention created here was very poignant. Following this is our humpback whale skeleton, and this received a very liberal coating of rubbish that had been very enthusiastically applied. An interesting point to note here is that this display actually acquired more rubbish than we started with. Visitors had actively been adding additional drink cans, crisp packets and other bits and pieces. This does provide an insight into psychology, like what goes on, in some people's minds at least, in that rubbish attracts further rubbish. Not very impressive really. During the week of the intervention, our young activists ran a series of workshops and interactive sessions, mixing directly in with visitors. And this included pledge boards, which I admit I was a bit worried about with the liberal coating of stickers and black marker pens being let loose in the galleries. Fortunately, we only had a few instances of stray stickers, and there were very few offensive phrases on the approach boards, which suggested a high respect for the intervention and the museum displays as a whole. From the start of this project, an associated evaluation project was being run alongside it by Cardiff University, and so a lot of work was done into monitoring and collecting feedback. This highlighted that the intervention had had a really significant impact on both visitors and staff alike. The intervention had been very unexpected. When staff arrived on site on a Tuesday morning, they said they found the galleries were unexpectedly covered in rubbish and plastic, and they were really taken by it. Visitors also actually engaged in the intervention and associated workshops, and often it was the youngsters that were leading their parents into the discussion. Many people were really taken by the creativity and how this added to the impact delivered by the intervention. I like the final quote here from one of our directorate staff around the fact that they came through this space daily, regularly, that you get used to them, and then suddenly we changed it, reimagining it in a way that was responding boldly to a serious topic affecting us. The work put into the intervention didn't end here either. Elements of it incorporated into an up-and-coming display at our partnership gallery at Oriel Park, St David's in Pembrokeshire. The gallery is a beautiful space to work, and it forms part of the visitor centre for the area. For this exhibition, we incorporated artworks and natural history items to reflect the coastal environment around Pembrokeshire, and this includes some notable art pieces, including a piece by the Dutch master De Kappel. In amongst this, we dispersed various birds and marine creatures, and incorporated even further into display with aspects of the plastics intervention. The display ran for 6 months and had a huge impact with many school groups and repeat visitors in the area. Oriel Park were pretty blown away by the reception the whole display got. So what did our young activists think of all this? Such working brings new challenges to traditions within the museum environment. Sport activism such as this, we can no longer have a neutral voice, and our processes have to be quicker. But it does provide a useful means to re-evaluate the way we work and the way we can be more receptive to communities and the bigger challenges facing the society and the world around us. The young activists are really taken by this project. They were surprised about how much freedom they were actually given and how their creative process was taken on board and utilised. Additionally, it also got them to appreciate issues around health and safety and the importance of looking after the collections and our display spaces. Overall, it really did help bring the way we work together and demonstrate how normally static museum displays can be embraced to create new and impactful interventions. So to finish, I'll conclude with a few thoughts of my own about the project. Usually as a conservator, the conservation practice tends to be stuck in the background a little. So the opportunity to come forward and initiate such an idea is usually quite limited. Thus, to be able to support the empowerment of an interventionist type that highlights a crucial issue that's affecting our world was a great opportunity. I was able to share my skills and knowledge in a positive way, not to say no, but to say yes to utilising the collections and displays in such a novel way. It was also great to enable team working, providing support and confidence in handling the materials and developing the displays. It was inspiring to be able to work closely with young activists and support them in their creative thinking and problem-solving processes. It was an excellent and worthwhile project, and something I hope we can do more of in the future. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Jules, for that great talk. Such a fantastic project. We're getting a lot of appreciation of it in the chat as well. So our first question asks about the leatherback turtle. Did you include information specifically about that turtle's history in the textual information for the visitor about the intervention?
That already exists in that gallery space. It's an important specimen because it's actually the world record holder, and we get regular requests. I mean, it was on a local Wales programme fairly recently, Weatherman Walking, for example. We did a little piece on it then. So the story about the turtle comes up very regularly, and there's additional material on People's Collections Wales website and all sorts of things. And it'll come up again because at the moment it's undergoing a massive conservation rebuild, which I've just almost finished. One advantage of lockdown, catching up on jobs.
And when you say the story comes up, do you mean the story of the plastic pollution?
There are elements of that in the turtle display already, because when it was autopsied, it had plastic bags in its gut, and we got some of the videos of that. Yeah.
Okay, so that's already there within the main displays, and it was usually brought out by. Thank you.
It's worth noting actually the video that goes with that display normally did change to its activism, because we got videos around it, and young activists actually did their own videos that went into them. But some of them are still running because we never took them down.
Fantastic. We have another question. An attendee who thought they heard Jules say that you didn't advertise the exhibition was happening. Could you say something about the thinking behind that?
It was very deliberate. Yes, we didn't really want to raise awareness for it. It's obviously in the summer holiday period when we're normally very busy. You know, big numbers of family groups, all sorts of people, and we didn't want the staff to know either. We just wanted that suddenly a space that's normally clean, very tidy. You know, typical museum spaces. We wanted it suddenly it was just covered in all this crap, even though it was sanitized for crap. And we just wanted that impact. The youth themselves wanted that. You know, they were part of that decision making, and it worked. Yeah,
I was interested that you included staff in that. I guess staff are so familiar with that space as well that for them there's a sort of different impact perhaps.
Yeah, the museum assistants, it's funny because some of those can be like a bit grumpy about such things, but they were just like, wow, what have you done? This is awesome. So when you get them on board, you know you're doing something interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I was interested in the reasoning behind your choice of timescale. I think you said it was in for a week. Are you able to share the thinking behind that?
Yeah, again, it was. I mean, this was also a pilot project and an idea, and typically at bigger institutions, it can be quite tricky to run these things. So I have to admit, you know, there was a bit of, me and Sarah did a bit of pre-prep to make the idea work before we actually presented it too officially, because there's so many layers to an institution. But it also just happened to work well that they were putting in for bigger money under the lottery scheme on this Hands-on Heritage, which is called something else now. No, it is Hands-on Heritage. It changed names a few times. And this is one of the pilot projects that enabled us to get the 3-year funding that goes with that. So it was being playful. You know, it was, you know, trying to experiment with how we could work these things. And so a little bit deliberate to sort of maybe work outside the normal parameters of how we run something like this.
It's amazing what learning it brings you, isn't it? And then you can take it out and do something different again as well. And you obviously retain some elements of the display, which is fantastic. So we have another question from someone saying, I'm so impressed by this project. Sorry if we missed this, but how long did the project take from start to finish? Because they're thinking about a climate change intervention in their galleries with the youth panel for COP26. What was the kind of development period?
Yeah, that's a good question. Offhand, it took quite a number of months. I can't remember when we initiated it. It might have taken 6 months because originally we were aiming for, you know, World Oceans Day or whatever it was, which is sometime in June, and there was just no way we were going to hit it. So the time frames went into the summer holidays instead, which was better in many respects. And it was just, in the end, it was just handling all that material because we did have to treat it properly. We washed it, it got frozen, it got sorted. We even had our Director General helping sort out one day and picking out the sort of needles and condoms and the other undesirables that were littering it. So this was proper beach waste, and you know, and that process of handling the material and bringing it into the museum was also very impactful and a part of the learning experience. So yeah, it did take quite a while, but it got more and more ambitious.
That's good to know.
It's great.
Another question saying, again, thank you for an inspiring talk. I was wondering, did you also implement information about how visitors could act to reduce plastic waste? So ways to get involved?
Yeah, that was very much on my learning colleagues and the youth activists themselves. They took part in that and those conversations. You know, that side of it, I let them run with. So I said there's a second. This has been fully evaluated, and I don't know whether it got published in the end. I'd have to chase that. But Cardiff University did fully evaluate this, and a lot of that information should be out there in some way. I think I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, that'd be fascinating to know. We're always up for blogs at NatSco. If you wanted to share any follow up with us, we're really interested to know how visitors responded and if there's any evaluation. Thank you.
Yeah, Jen does chase me, but she's in the office almost next to me. So.
And then a final question says, will the museum retain some elements of the display?
Not in this sense. And it had a time and place, I think, and everything got recycled in the end. It got used, you know, in that final example of Oriola Park, and little bits of it, like the the key they made on different types of marine plastics and given them sort of creature names, made up Latin names and stuff. Elements of that still exist and do get reused. But at the end of it, most of the plastic was actually sorted and recycled, and we only kept small parts of it. It's that usual challenge really for us, you know, it's storing stuff, knowing what you've got, where it is, and practicalities come into play. But I think, you know, it's something that had its time and place, and it was right at the time. And then to repeat it, you'd want to do it something differently, just to keep that creativity and that imagination going, I think, and that changing that impact it will have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll bring you back at the end of this session if there's a bit of time. Otherwise, hope to see you in the panel discussion.